Thanks for staying with us. Alexandra residents are trying to piece their lives together following a devastating fire. Around 500 shacks were razed to the ground and hundreds of people left homeless. Thursday's blaze comes just weeks before Christmas, and residents say Johannesburg Emergency Services failed to respond on time. But city officials have denied those claims. For more on this story, I'm joined in the studio by eNCA reporter Masego Rahlaga. Masego, you spent the morning there. Reality very much kicking in for hundreds of these people and their families who have been left with nothing. Tell us what you found there this morning.
Well, Marcel, you can imagine it's quite a small area. Alexandra as a whole is quite highly populated for the amount of space that it actually occupies in the city of Johannesburg. But this particular area is very small, and I could not imagine 500 shacks fitting in that small square meter. Those few square meters that are there. So that's, first of all, really something that if you imagine it, it's quite something,
It also meant that fire moved very quickly.
It moved very quickly, and basically people couldn't salvage most of their stuff. And what residents told us actually is things like important documents, Marcel, such as IDs, birth certificates, things you need to apply.
Money, I'm sure, as well.
Money. There's a woman actually who says she was supposed to go back home to the Eastern Cape. She was planning to go back next week. She had withdrawn her money. It's burnt. It's all gone. When she arrived at the bank with her husband to try and get the money back, she doesn't have an ID. Her husband doesn't have an ID. Everything burnt. And so they have to now go to the police station to get an affidavit there. So it's they have to start over basically, and it was very sad seeing them actually, using all those tools to try and rebuild their home. Some of them saying they don't even have money to buy the corrugated iron, so they're taking the corrugated iron that actually is already burnt. You can see that this is going to fall off after about 3-4 days. So it's quite sad. But we also saw ShopRite, for instance, that was there to offer some food. They gave them some soup and bread. There was also another private company that dropped off food, groceries, but residents saying we don't have anywhere to stay, we don't have stoves, so we're just going to keep this food. That's great.
And we don't have fridges. Where are we going to keep it fresh?
Store the food, where are we going to cook the food? So it's basically just stress upon stress, some of them with small babies on their backs, babies who don't know what's going on. They just want what they want, and there's no way to change your baby. And for instance, if anything happens in their nappy, you have to go back to the hall or change them right there, run the risk of them.
Where's the dignity
sick.
in that?
None at all. None at all.
Now, unfortunately, again, news coming through today that some of the residents have complained that the emergency services did not respond as fast as they should. What have you found out?
Well, basically, the residents, of course, saying, for instance, emergency services eventually arrived after a long time of them calling and calling. Eventually, there were emergency services officials there, but they couldn't even extinguish the fire on time, as it was actually rapidly continuing, because, as they say, there was not enough water in some of, the equipment that they use. Apparently, the fire truck, when it arrives, it doesn't have water in it. So things that, for instance, a layperson like myself wouldn't understand. But, the response that we got from, for instance, my colleague Malungelo Boyi, who actually covered the story when the fire broke out on Thursday, spoke to Nana Khadebe of Joburg Emergency Services, who was saying that, we tried, but, for instance, the spots where we actually get the water, empty. The water was empty, it was used, or, the level was actually very low. So it took them quite a while, apparently having to drive around to actually find spots where there is water, to get that water to that area. But by then it was too late. But also the residents are also saying, they appreciate the help that they've been getting, for instance, from ordinary South Africans, big corporate companies such as ShopRite with the food and clothing supply. But, they are hoping, for instance, Home Affairs will also step in to help them in terms of getting their documents back, the documents that burnt. And also government promising them, yesterday I'm sure you saw the Premier, David Makhura, as well as Community Safety MEC Sizakele Nkosi Malobane, visiting the area. The city of Johannesburg's Michael Son also saying that they will be offering some help in terms of the material that is needed, for instance, corrugated iron. But, Michael Son himself also telling me over the phone today that it cannot be something that will happen in a day's time. They have to first pick it up to get there first and actually get rid of all the rubble and make sure that it's safe to rebuild there again. And then the material, there's also procurement in getting that material to arrive there. But residents also saying, why don't you build us houses? Why are you promising us with corrugated iron.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, David Makura, when he visited yesterday, was quick to say that they had up-to-date statistics as to how many people were living in that area, because they had just done a survey of the area or something like that. So they knew exactly how many shacks were in the area, how many people were affected. One would hope then that what is being done with that information, and what are they doing to ensure that when a fire like this breaks out again, that they know they've got the water resources nearby to be able to fight that fire in the right way, so not as many people are affected next time. One can understand then that these people are then so frustrated because we're going to rebuild, but this might happen again in a week's time.
And it's so sad, Marcel, to think of an area like Alexandra where we have to say things like it's going to happen again. You know, we expect it to happen again, and for emergency services not to be ready, especially for an area that is so densely populated like Alexandra, the deep slurs of this town. You know, you need to work quicker and make sure that there are things there. Luckily and fortunately, nobody died, you know, and, you know, unless we're talking about the man that they were accusing of starting the fire. You know, and you look at Alexandra, and remember earlier this year I covered another story where about 100 houses went on fire just this year. Earlier again, there was those mothers who apparently left their small kids, 4 kids, burned to death. The mothers are still going in and out of court for that. So it's very sad that we expect this to happen again in Alexandra, but we're expecting also at the same time that since 1994, a government would make sure that there are systems in place to avoid this, and also, first of all, some sort of housing that will happen to make sure that things don't burn so rapidly, because houses are so close together.
Decent housing is what so many people are asking for. Thank you for your time, and thank you for bringing us up to speed on what is happening in Alex. We, of course, will be keeping tabs on developments there.